Well, friends, welcome to political theory. In political theory, there are many concepts which formulate a political theory, and historically, these concepts have been very important in defining what is political theory. Amongst these political concepts, we have sovereignty, we have state, we have citizenship, we have rights, equality, freedom, and of course justice. Now justice is very important. If we look at the history of political theory, we will find that justice was present in the ancient political thought also. When we say that Plato was the father of political thought, then we can find justice in Plato also. And from Plato to the contemporary political thinker John Rawls, justice has its ups and downs in political theory, but it has always been a part of political theory in the history. So let us begin with the question of what is justice. Like any other concept of political theory, justice is also contestable. There are several definitions of justice, there are various interpretations of justice, and it is almost impossible to come to a consensus to define what is justice. But we can't just leave it like this, that we can't decide what is justice. So let us start with the concept of justice or definition of justice, which is largely speaking accepted by most of the thinkers. It begins with Roman law. In Roman law, when it was codified by Justinian, then from 6th century AD, they define justice is defined as the constant and perpetual will to render to each his due. The constant and perpetual will to render to each his due. Now it means that justice comes when we speak that people are getting what they deserve. And when we say that what they deserve, they get it, then we say that there is a sense of justice in every individual. So when somebody doesn't get what he thinks that he deserves, then he says that I am getting injustice, and then he approaches state for this injustice and says that I want justice. So this is a definition which cut across all the political thinkers, and which is most simplified definition of justice, that people should get what they deserve. If they are getting what they deserve, then then the state is just, then the society is just. But then how people will get what they deserve? So we come to the point of the types of justice. There are many types of justice, and we can classify justice from various angles. But the simplified way of classifying them is, there is one set of justice that is called corrective justice and distributive justice. Now corrective justice is that a person who does something, if he does something which is good for society, which is good for the state, he or she should get reward. And if he does something not good for society or for the state, then he or she should be punished. So punishment and reward is part of corrective justice. So some thinkers define justice only in this way, and then you can say that it is a very narrow view of looking at justice. There is another way of justice, and that is called distributive justice. Now in distributive justice, justice means that in society, the primary goods should be distributed as per just law or just practice. So the distribution of goods is the responsibility of the state, and a state should form or follow such policies which are just in nature. So justice can either be corrective or it can be distributive. In the same manner, justice is also procedural, or justice is substantive, which means that some thinkers emphasize that the process of reaching at justice is more important than the substance of justice, the content of justice. Because if the procedure is not just, then we cannot arrive at a just principle. So for them, procedure is very important. And we can see that in most of the civilized countries, we say that it is not important, it is not simply important to deliver just decisions. It is also important to show to the world that justice is being done in a just manner. So procedure is important. Like in India, if we see that if we go to court, we have several layers of courts where we find the process of justice is being done. And sometimes people become angry that someone who is largely conceived as committing a punishment is not getting punishment from the court because the process is very long. But the process is long because we believe in the procedural justice also. Justice is to be seen to be given. Not only justice is given, but it is to be seen to be given. So procedure is important for some. Some others believe that, well, procedure may be important, but ultimately it is the substance, it is the principle of justice which is important to impart justice. If the principle is not there, then we cannot say that justice is being done. So these are the two types in which we can talk of justice. If we talk of the scope of justice, what justice should be applied to what, to whom, then there is a debate whether justice should be applied to what we call in philosophical terminology the relational individuals, because justice is basically defining the relation between different individuals. So if individuals are not relating to each other, which means that if they are not living in society, then justice cannot be imparted, because in society we sit and we behave, we have our behavior with each other, and then on the basis of that behavior we decide that the behavior is just or not. So relational individuals are the categories on which justice should be imparted. Some says that no, justice should not be confined to human beings only. Not only human beings, but we say that human beings, those who are in society, and not those who are living outside society. Some say, like Martha Nussbaum, she says that, well, justice should not be confined to humans only. Non-humans should also be included in justice because they are also feeling animals. So there is a debate about how, to what extent justice should be applied. Then, if we go to the history of justice, then we will find that in ancient political theory also, we find there are many cases, many thinkers who have talked about justice. We begin with Plato, for instance. Now, Plato, in his classic, The Republic, says that the book is about justice, because the fundamental question of Plato was that what is a good man and how to make a man good, which means, and goodness is defined, there are many characteristics which define goodness. The goodness is defined as the one who possesses justice. Now, what is justice? According to Plato, human beings have three elements in his spirit: a reason, a spirit, and desire. There are three parts of soul. In the same manner, the society is also composed of three classes, that is based on reason, based on spirit, and desire. Now, justice, every individual has got these three elements in his soul, and justice is there when the dominant part of that soul, the person is motivated by the dominant part of that soul and work accordingly. Like a person who has got a reason dominant personality, if he is working according to reason, thinking according to reason, then he is a just person. But if he is dominated by spirit and he is working according to reason, then he is not a just person. So the problem in the society is this, that individuals do not know what element is dominating in them, in their soul, and because of that they are behaving in an unjust manner, and society is full of injustice. This is what Plato, so Plato did not distinguish between what we call morality, justice, the political concept, or the philosophical concept, because for him everything was related to each other or overlapping each other. At that time, three theories were in vogue. representing by Cephalus, Thrasymachus, and Glauca. And Plato has, by using Socrates, he criticized all these three theories and established his theory of justice based on the principle that the dominant element in soul should be followed. Then comes Aristotle. Now, Aristotle in his Nicomachean Ethics book, he was a follower of Plato in the beginning, and then he started on his own. And in this classic work of ethics, Nicomachean Ethics, he defines justice as abiding to law, which means if citizens are obeying law, then they are just. So obeying law is justice. Why this is so? Because Aristotle has defined law by saying that law is unaffected desire. Law is unaffected desire, which means law is nothing but it is unaffected. Law is reason unaffected by desire. It is reason which is unaffected by desire. So it means that if individuals are following reason in one sense, then they are following justice. So reason is the basis of justice according to Aristotle, and law, which is embodiment of a collective reason which is not affected by individual desire, to follow that means that we are following justice. In the medieval period, with the dominance of Christianity and Christian philosophers, justice was not considered very important. It was considered as God's will is justice. Whatever God says is justice. And how will we know what God says? Then we should go to the church, which we should listen to the head of the church, and then whatever he interprets, what is God's will, if we abide by that, then we are doing justice and the church is doing justice. So in the medieval period, justice was rendered into secondary position. The primary position of behavior was to follow God's will. Then comes enlightenment and modern period, we say. Hobbes, for the first time, he says that no, justice is nothing if there is no Leviathan. Because if there is no Leviathan, then everybody is at war with each other. And the one who has got power, he will do whatever he wants to do. So in a lawlessness society where there is no Leviathan, then justice consists in power only. Whosoever is powerful, if whatever he does, people will accept that it is right. So justice is what the powerful person is doing in a society. And when a Leviathan comes into existence, after everybody believes that it is not possible to go on like this, afraid of each other, so they give up their power to an artificial man called Leviathan and give all their power to rule over themselves. They give their power. In that sense, then the Leviathan becomes the supreme embodiment of power, and then whatever the state or Leviathan says, that is justice. John Locke started a new theory of justice, and he says that justice lies in natural law, because he believed in natural law and natural rights. So he believed that there are some natural laws by which human beings are governed. They are converted into human laws by human beings, but natural law are there by which the universe is governed. So justice consists in following those natural law. That is what John Locke has defined. Then comes the utilitarians of the 19th century. They believe that the good and bad are differentiated by whether something is given maximum happiness to maximum people or not. So if the state is providing maximum happiness to maximum people, then state is giving justice. Whatever policies state is formulating by providing maximum happiness to maximum people, he says, the utilitarians like Bentham or Mill, they say that, well, that means that this is justice. So we can say that in utilitarianism, justice is also given by the state, which is based on the principle of providing maximum happiness to maximum people. Then comes Karl Marx. Now, for Karl Marx, justice is a bourgeois concept, because he believes that in a society where class struggle is going on, where one class is exploiting other, we cannot talk of justice. Justice is an artificial concept in that type of society. So the more fundamental concept is equality. So he believes and he argues that there should be a classless society, and a class struggle should go to this extent that one class is abolished and the workers' class dominate the whole society. Then only equality will be established, and by equality the concept of justice will be established. Now, this is that, you can say that up to the 19th century, this is the story of justice which is going on. Then in the 20th century, for the 50-60 years, justice was not a dominant concept in political theory. John Rawls, when he wrote his magnum opus in 1971, that is A Theory of Justice, he revived concept of justice in political theory. He not only revived justice, but he revived liberalism through a concept of justice. So we can say that in contemporary political theory, Rawlsian theory of justice is the most important contribution. And nowadays we cannot avoid talking about justice until unless we either accept or modify or criticize what is Rawlsian concept of justice. Now, if you look at Rawlsian concept, then in his book A Theory of Justice, Rawls says that why he has taken justice as a concept to revive liberalism. Why he has taken justice as the foundation of a liberal state. And then he writes very beautifully that according to Rawls, justice is a primary virtue of social institutions, like truth is a primary virtue of system of thought. Any iota of truth, any system of truth, which may look very lucrative, which may look very economic, but which is devoid of truth, we should not accept that system of thought. But in the same manner, any social system which may look very economic, which may look very positive, which may look very beneficial, but if it is not based on concept of social justice or justice, then we should not accept that social institution, because justice is the primary virtue of social institution. A social institution is defined by the concept of justice. When he talks of justice, he says that, well, his concept of justice is primarily distributive justice, which means that when he talks of justice, he says that justice primarily is concentrated in how we distribute the primary goods. Now, primary goods, according to him, is rights, liberties, opportunities, powers, income and wealth. And these things, these primary goods, the distribution of these primary goods is the essence of justice. And so we should have a policy or a theory which clearly defines that these primary goods, how they can be distributed. He gives this scheme of justice by the name of justice as fairness. According to Rawls, justice as fairness is the principle by which distribution of primary goods should take place. Now, why there is a need for a new theory of justice as fairness when there were many theories which were existing? So he took two theories, that is, one is utilitarian and the second is institution, and criticized them that these existing theories are not adequate to use for the distribution of primary goods for distributive justice. In utilitarian theory, he talks of Bentham, Mill, and he's more concerned about Sigwick, because he believes that Sigwick is the one who represents classical utilitarians. As we know that utilitarian theory is based on the principle of providing maximum happiness to the maximum people. And they believe that justice consists in providing maximum happiness to the maximum people. And they formulate this theory of justice on this assumption that whatever is good for an individual is good for all humanity, for all members of society. And so the best way or the practical way is to see what policy will help the maximum number of the society, and they give maximum happiness to society, to the members of society, and that policy should be followed. Now, this utilitarian principle is criticized by John Rawls. He says there are 2-3 major criticisms of this. One criticism is that in this theory, this theory is not meant for all, which means that even in theory there is a lacuna that not all members of society will get justice. It is assumed even at the theoretical level that all persons cannot get justice. Only maximum persons can get justice. So this is not a right theory of justice for the whole society. That is the first, we can say, critique of utilitarianism. The second critique is that happiness is not equal to being just. For instance, if in an office, if everybody gets his salary according to a just principle, but it is not assumed that everybody will be happy with the paycheck. A may get paycheck of something, and according to the principles of income distribution or payment distribution, that is a just policy, but he may not be happy about it. And someone who has got less money, but he may be happy about it. So happiness cannot be equal to justice. Justice is impartiality. Justice is fairness. Justice is objective. Justice is not defined by a subjective perception of a particular thing. So that is the second criticism, that justice, being just is not equal to being happy. And the last thing is that in this philosophy, some individuals are used as a means for another individuals, because those who are not getting maximum benefit because they do not belong to the maximum people, to the area of maximum people, they are being used by the maximum people for their own good. And according to Immanuel Kant, because Rawls follows Kant also, Kant says that every individual is an end in himself. We cannot say that individual can be used for another individual. Individual cannot be used as a means, and because of this, John Rawls says that utilitarianism is not a good policy for justice. Another policy which was important at that time was intuitionism, and there are many thinkers like Brian Barry and others. So Rawls criticized them that intuition cannot be a basis for a common good, because intuition varies from individual to individual. When we are talking about society or community, we are talking about the common goods which are composed of primary goods. So the common good cannot be perceived by intuition. They can be perceived only by reason, because intuitions is arbitrary and it is individualistic. So that is the second existing theory of justice which John Rawls criticized, and say that no, I don't agree that utilitarianism or intuitionism are good theories of justice. And that is why he says that there is a need for an alternative to these two existing systems, and then he gives his theory of justice, which is called justice as fairness. In justice as fairness, he provides two principles of justice, and then which are the substance of justice, and then he also provides the procedure by which we arrive at this principle. As I argued out that according to Rawls, justice is primarily distributive justice, and for distributing primary goods, we require a just policy which should be fair in its essence. Now for that, he gives two principles which we will talk about, and to arrive at that principle, he gives a particular procedure, and he uses a procedure of social contract. We know that in the 18th century, social contract was the modern theory of the origin of a state. And a social contract theory means primarily that it is a contract between free individuals, and they come together to have a contract with each other so that they can live in a society where they can find their potential to be exhausted. They can be happily live there. So now John Rawls says that social contract, what I am trying to do, he has written in his book that what I am trying to do is to raise the abstract level of the theory of social contract, which was used by Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau and Kant. So, and by using it, he is creating a state which he calls constitutional democracy. Now, the position in which the individuals sit together and have a contract is to find a theory of justice on which the state can be based. Now, he assumes, he gives what we calls a thought experiment. He does a thought experiment, and he gives a notion of original position. Now, original position is almost a similar concept with the concept of the state of nature used by social contractualists like Hobbes, Locke and Rousseau. So we can compare his concept of original position with the state of nature. Now, in original position is different from a state of nature because there are certain characteristics of the original position which distinguish it from the state of nature used by the social contractualist of 18th century. In original position, first thing, it is an imaginative position. It is not a historical position. Rawls never claimed that something like this has happened. He says that when we are trying to create an ideal state which is based on justice, let us create a situation which is imaginary. And that imaginary situation is the original position. That position was there when there was no state, there was no justice. The society was there in the sense that individuals were living in a society, but they were not doing something which can qualify them to remain happy ever. So the individuals who were sitting there in an original position, they were in search of a principle by which the state, by which a principle can be formulated on which the state can exist. Now, what type of individuals were there? Now, he defines individual in a particular way. He says that the individuals who were part of this original position, they were rational, they were moral, they were free and equal, they have a sense of justice, and they were also non-altruistic. Now, we can say that being rational means that he believed that the basis of the social contract is rationality. And he is a rational person, he is a modern man, John Rawls. He believed that individuals decide their fundamental questions in life by reason only, not by intuition. So they are rational. When they are sitting in the original position and start to find the principles of justice, all these individuals are rational. They are also moral in the sense, not they are very moral from the philosophical sense, but they are moral in the sense that they are open to the discussion. They are open, they are free, they are open to the discussion, and they all agree that we will talk rationally, we will try to find a principle in a rational manner. The most important characteristic of this, which is unique, is non-altruistic. Now, non-altruistic is that he says that the most of the problems arise in societies because everybody is trying to show that he is thinking for others. But liberalism or capitalism is based on selfish. Even John, those who promulgated capitalism, they always talk of the selfishness of individuals because capitalism rises on the basis of selfishness, and selfishness is not wrong. If you are using selfishness not for harming others, then selfishness can be a good principle for a capitalist society. Adam Smith, for instance, has talked about this, that this selfish nature of human beings is the basis of the capitalist society. Now, John Rawls also talks about here that he's not saying that that they are selfish, but he says they are not non-altruistic in the sense they are not trying to say that we are helping others. They are there to find solution for their own problems. And if everybody is like this, then it is possible that a good principle of justice can be found. Now, when these individuals are sitting in this original position, there is also a new concept which introduced that is called the wheel of ignorance. He says that if the individuals sitting there has their own background in their mind, they cannot think rationally or freely. So there is a wheel of ignorance on their mind, which means they forget about the race, ethnicity, gender, age, income, wealth, natural endowments, comprehensive doctrines of any, etc., etc. And they are also not aware of the political system of the society, the class struggle, class structure, economic system, and others. In this sense, he says that individuals are then free of the burdens of their past, and then they are totally in an objective conditions. They are sitting there and they are trying to find a solution for their problems. The problem is that the primary goods are not distributed rationally. That was the main problem. And so in the original position, they have three different alternatives: utilitarianism, intuitionism, and justice as fairness. And as we found that he already criticized utilitarianism and and intuitionism. And then he says, he argues out then why people will go for the justice as fairness. Thank you.